Yes and no. So
Does that make
yes
sense?
depends on the price ranges. So there are a ton of renovation loans that will fund, I wouldn't say ton, but a couple of renovation loans that will fund more than the value of the home. FHA has something called a 2 or 3K loan. That's a renovation loan. Fannie Mae had something called a renovation loan. Those Some of those loans are limited by the loan amount that they will offer.
Renovating your home doesn't have to be difficult. It's all about understanding some key principles and having a plan. Welcome to the Behind the Renovation podcast. I'm your host, Alice T. Chan. I've been obsessed with all things home since I was 10 years old and have been improving homes professionally for nearly 2 decades. This podcast is dedicated to helping you navigate the messy and the magical when it comes to home improvement. Consider this the real talk, behind the scenes, not the produced plot twists of home and garden television shows. Each week, I'll share my tried and true tips, lessons, and interviews with real people just like you who have renovated and lived to tell about it. Get ready to ugly cry happy tears as you do the happy dance. Okay, let's do this. Your new and improved home is waiting. If you're in the process of selling your home or preparing your house to sell, this season of the Behind the Renovation podcast is perfect for you. Over the next few weeks, I'm interviewing industry professionals and related businesses for the Home Selling Success Series to help you understand what home selling, buying, and renovating looks like in 2021 and how you can prepare yourself for the good, the bad, and that elusive virtue called patience. In today's episode, I'm interviewing Shashank Shekhar, loan officer and CEO of Arcus Lending. Shashank has been named the number 4 broker in the country. With a 2020 production of $364 million, Shashank has continuously raised industry standards. In addition to being on the cover of National Mortgage Professional magazine, he is an Amazon best-selling author, is frequently quoted by national media, and has been the keynote speaker at major conferences around the country. He is also the creator of MLO Masterclass, a leading training platform for loan officers. You can find Shashank on Instagram at shashank.redemption or visit arcuslending.com.
Welcome to the podcast, Shashank. Thank you so much for joining me.
Sure, Alice. How are you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing great.
All
Looking
right.
forward to it.
Yeah. So, as we know, the real estate market is hot, hot, hot. And so it'd be really interesting to hear from your perspective how that's affected the mortgage, the lending side, and how homeowners should be preparing for that process, because I think it could be very daunting, but it's a major piece of the entire process, right? So even before we do that, can you kind of just explain what that mortgage process looks like right now for folks?
Sure, of course. And talking of hot real estate market, Alice, I mean, the U.S. markets and most of the major markets have been hot for a very long period of time. And I mean, of
Mm-hmm.
course, you see some cyclical movement here. The winters could be a little slower in some of the
Yeah.
markets, and spring and summer could be super hot. But overall, if you'll see for several years now, since we started the recovery around 2011, 2012, is that
Yes.
we have had a solid 7, 8 years of very strong growth in real estate prices. So just wanted to point that out to our audience here is
Mm-hmm.
that even though we kind of see that it's steaming up quite a lot, but we have been seeing the similar trend for almost 7, 8 years now. And
Okay.
talking of mortgage process, the process itself has not changed because of the pandemic. I mean, the
Okay.
process itself remains the same. There is other than minor variations here and there. There are situations that I think the biggest change that has happened with the mortgage process is that a lot of appraisals can be done what is called exterior only. So you don't have to go inside the house and do the inspection for the home. A lot of inspections can happen outside, depending on the price range, and there are some qualification parameters. So that's a good thing both for home sellers and the home buyers, because I know a lot of home sellers do not want people to come inside the house right now, as because of the COVID and other concerns that they might have. But overall, the process, the way it works is that if you're thinking of buying a home, is that the first thing that you would want to do is to get yourself pre-approved. And now, what pre-approval basically means is that you are making sure that the house that you're looking for, or the price range that you're looking for, that you qualify for that price range. You don't want to go into, especially in a market like this, when it can take months before you're able to get, say, one of your offers accepted, right?
Mm-hmm.
And then to realize that I don't qualify for this mortgage because of one reason or the other. That's heartbreaking and a lot of wasted time and emotion, right? And you don't want to do that. So that's the first step that you do as a home buyer. And even as a home seller, that's something that you should be strongly looking for while considering the offers for buyers. Because why would you allow someone else to get into contract who is not fully pre-approved? And once you get pre-approved and then look for a home with your real estate agent, and once you get into contract, then it's typically about a 30-day process from there. From where we re-verify some of your asset and income documentation. We order appraisal to find out the value of the home. Work with your closing agent, like your title, escrow, or closing attorney, to work on some of the title papers, and then hopefully get the keys to your home that you have been looking for so many months in this market.
Right.
Finally, that in about 30 days. So that's how the mortgage process looks like.
Okay. So when you're saying the appraisals can be done from the exterior, so they don't actually have to enter the property, how does that work when you actually want them to see what some of the features are and some of the upgrades have been in your property? How does that work? Do they just take photographs or a video, or do they judge it by that, or that's not even a consideration?
Really good question. And just understand that exterior only is an option. It's not mandated.
Okay.
So if you as a seller or even as a buyer, if you think that this home is somehow superior than some of the other homes that have sold in the neighborhood, you may choose not to pick exterior only and say, why don't you go inside? Because I think we can get an extra 20, 30 grand because of the upgrades that has happened in the house. So it's totally optional. You don't have to do that. But even if it's done exterior only, appraisers are allowed to take the upgraded pictures from, say, something like MLS. So they can go look at the listing and can see what are the upgrades and the improvements that the house has had, and can potentially account for that into their valuation. So that's an option.
Do you feel like the pandemic has affected the housing market and the lending industry in any way? Has it positively or negatively?
It has. I mean, negatively in the sense because the entire change was so much. The mortgage industry has been kind of used to working from the office. You had these big desktops, multiple screens, because people are used to working with 10 documents at the same time, 20 different websites. And all of that infrastructure kind of went away because you had to work from home. Well, probably you were working with one single laptop with kids screaming around you. So they were, so they
It's a
were,
different level of ADD.
yeah, exactly. So from that infrastructure perspective, I think there was a lot of change. And for some people, that was a big change because maybe they always worked on large and multiple desktops and everything else. And that, I think, to an extent, in the beginning at least, the productivity went down a little bit as the companies were scrambling to find more laptops. And laptops, as we know, I mean, they're almost sold out. There were very few laptops to be had. The delivery time were longer, and so that really that increased the turn time on a lot of closing. Not to mention that the industry itself had to account for almost 3 times the regular business because the rates were so low. A lot of people were refinancing. And so all of that capacity issue and infrastructure issue, all of that meant that borrowers had to wait months before closing, at least on refinances. Thankfully, on purchase, most of the lenders were still kind of prioritizing that, and we were still closing on time. Appraisals became a big issue, as we were talking before, is that, I mean, the people did not want the appraisers to come in the home. And finally, thankfully, the agencies came up with a guideline where in most cases, we could get an exterior-only appraisal. That wasn't an option on most jumbo loans, unfortunately. So those interior appraisals still had to be done. What I also think is that just in terms of mindset, more borrowers open to doing more online and digital mortgage, which wasn't the case before. I mean, we were seeing a trend of more and more people opting to go online, but I think that was accelerated over the last 18 months last 14, 16 months. Is because you did not have an option. Like even if you wanted to, you could not just walk into your bank or could not shake hands with your loan officer. It was what it was. You had to do everything through online and digital and Zoom and phone calls and everything else. So I think from a mindset perspective, more people are now open to be working on an online digitized mortgage kind of a place. And then finally, from a real estate perspective, which I'm sure a lot of people would have seen, that is the cost of construction has gone up dramatically because of the supply chain issues, because of the fact that factories are closed, not just in the US, but across the world. It's a pandemic. It's a global phenomena. And so that has pushed up the cost of construction, which has pushed up the cost of the home itself, And that has impacted the inventory because a lot of people do not want their homes to be in the market, don't want people to be entering their homes right now, and they're just uncomfortable with the entire situation. So all of that has contributed towards a much higher home price right now than what it was, say, 12 months back. Some of the markets have seen 20, 25% year on year increases. So I think those are some of the biggest changes that I've seen during the last 14, 16 months, Alice.
Do you feel like since now we're kind of coming out of that situation, people are a little more comfortable, they're a little more aware, there's a lot more education and information available to us. Do you see this industry moving more towards the digital going forward versus going back to how it was before, where it was more of an in-person process?
I do not see us going back. I mean, there might be some people who might feel again comfortable with the fact that they are again able to go an in-person process and everything else. But a lot of trends got accelerated so much that there is no going back on it. And you will see that more and more people will be open to not meeting their loan officers in person. Or, I mean, we had a lot of even remote notarization, even for the closing docs. A lot of closings were happening remotely, which is the fact that, I mean, and a lot of states came up with the regulations where they were hesitating earlier. Now we have almost 42, 43 states in the last count that allowed some kind of remote notarization, or touchless closing, as you would like to call it, where you don't have to be in presence of a notary, and even if the notary is there, you can work on your own touchpad. The notary could be working on their own touchpad, and you don't have to be signing the same documents in person, both of them together. So all of those trends have accelerated quite a lot. There's no technology we have seen, Alice. I mean, you and I in Silicon Valley, we see that every day. Once it starts accelerating, there's
Right.
no going back. It's not as if we started ordering
Yeah.
food from DoorDash and ordering food from Amazon Prime, and suddenly one day, like, oh, you know what? Leave all of this, and we'll just go back to doing what we were doing 10 years back. It never happens. It's just we find it more convenient, and we just get
Yeah.
used to it.
I was just going to say the
Yeah,
convenience
I mean,
factor.
once we started
Yeah.
using remote control on our television, we were not looking for that buttons on the television ever again.
You will sit there and kill yourself looking for the dang remote
Not to
and
stand
not
up.
stand up to actually like turn it on the actual
Exactly. See,
television.
that's just a mindset change that happens. Once you are used to the easy, you don't
Yeah.
want to go to the hard. So no, I don't see that trend going back. And we will see, in fact, even more and more digitization and online experience when it comes to mortgages.
Very interesting. I was actually listening to an interview that you did with someone else, and you were talking about a program that you're working with, right? Called the
Hmm.
Rachel.
Yeah,
Is that more moving towards that same kind of direction where it's not so one on one? You're able to access information on
it
your
is. It's
own.
it's very interesting. So Rachel is what is it's a conversational platform, something like say Siri and Alexa is. We call it conversational AI because it learns from itself, right? It's an artificial intelligence. Like Siri learns from itself,
Hmm.
Alexa learns from itself, and we have been used to Siri and Alexa now for 3, 4, 5 years. So, and what
Hmm.
the digital human does is that it takes the same kind of conversation to a different scale, in the sense that Siri and Alexa are audio formats, right? We don't see Siri, we don't see Alexa,
Right.
they don't have a human form. But Rachel is a digital human, so it has all the capability of Siri and Alexa, but it's in a human form. So it looks more natural, more human, so to say, and you can converse with Rachel. The one big difference for Rachel is that she's made specifically for the mortgage industry. So she can answer your mortgage questions like, hey, should I take 30-year fixed or 7-year ARM? Which Alexa or Siri may not be able to answer because they are not made for specifically for the industry. So Rachel has all the good elements
Hmm.
that you see in Siri and Alexa, so to say, but it also has a lot of mortgage intelligence that they don't have. And I mean, I personally think that's the next level of conversational intelligence that there is, and it makes everyone's experience much easier. You can come to the website; it's more human. You can have fun. I mean, Rachel can tell jokes. It can do calculation for you. Your kids can do math homework with Rachel if they wanted to. So it has,
Are you
yeah. So it has all
serious?
the fun elements, but it also has all the serious. You can track your loan status. Rachel will be able to tell you where your loan is, what kind of interest rate you're on. So, and we are still working on it. It's a new technology, and we are trying to improve it. But we were the first one to create it in the mortgage industry, not just in the U.S. but across the world. And so yeah, we are very proud of the creation and trying to make it easier for our customers to work with us.
That's amazing. Man, I tell you. So are we somehow working our human people out of a job at some
So
point?
Rachel actually does not do anything to remove a human employee. It just helps improve the experience
Okay.
of our borrowers, of our clients. So instead of sending an
Okay.
email and waiting for someone to respond, instead of not being able to know the answer at 11 p.m. in the night, Rachel will be able to help you with that.
Yeah.
So it's more about improving the
Hmm.
experience than about trying to take somebody else's job. And because it's a
Okay.
24/7 world now, and not everyone wants to wait until, say, your loan officer, your processor wakes up and goes to work at 9 a.m. And that's where Rachel comes in.
Right. I agree. I just had somebody calling me at 10 o'clock last night. I'm like, why are you calling me at 10 p.m. on a Sunday? I am not answering the phone.
Sure, of
So I need a
course.
Rachel. So let me ask you, for
Mhm.
first time home buyers, like it's very exciting to be buying a home, but it also can be very scary. How can someone who is first time on the market buying a home prepare for that process? Like what are some of the key points that they should keep in mind?
Sure. I mean, Alice, I've written two books on first-time home buyers. I've written, I don't know, hundreds, if not thousands of blog posts on specifically on that topic because um, I think they need more help than any other kind of clients, and that's why I just have a stronger feeling about helping them. They need more handholding, then they need more guidance. Once you have bought the home a couple of times or refinancing, I mean, you have understood the process a little bit. With first-time home buyers, I think working with the right partners, I think is very important than the other kind of buyers. And by right partners, I mean choosing the right real estate agent and choosing the right mortgage lender could be 80-90% of the work done because they are the ones, if you find the right people to work with, then they will work with you to find the right home and find the right mortgage. If you get that process wrong, then I mean you've lost half the battle already. Is that either you don't find the right thing or what you get is not what you should have paid for. So I think that's the first step, and that may sound very vague. Is that how do you find the right partner? How do you find the right real
Hmm.
estate agent or lender? The good thing is that it's 2021. There's a lot of consumer review sites that you can go to. Of course, I mean the first step could be just check with your friends and family if they have worked with someone that they like. You might like the same person as well. If that's not the case, then you have the Yelps and the Zillows and the Facebooks and the Googles of the world where the consumer reviews is there for everyone to see. So choose that very carefully. Don't rush through that process because if you do that correctly, then most of the work will be done by them anyway. They are the ones who are guiding you, advising you, coaching you during the entire process. And the second thing is that uh, before you get into the shiniest stuff of looking at home, and I know it's more glamorous and more sexy to
Right.
look at the
That's more
shiny,
fun.
yeah, I mean you are in that side of the business, Alice, so you know what I'm talking about. That's the more glamorous part of it. Nobody wants to go through the boring numbers, finance, mortgage part of the process. We understand we do the boring part, right? The real estate agents get to do
But
the
so important.
yeah, get to do the sexier part of look at the shiny countertops and then
Right.
chandelier and the hardwood floors and all that. But understand that that's, as you rightly said, that's, I mean, I'm not trying to minimize one works versus the other, but that is the more
Sure.
important part of the process. If you haven't figured out your finances, not just from the perspective of how much you qualify for, but also how much are you comfortable making the payment. Sometimes you may qualify for more, but you may have I don't know, kids tuition to pay for or something medical, your parents to take care of. We don't consider those as debts, but we guide you. If you find out about that you have those kind of obligations, we'll tell you, hey, you might qualify for a $600,000 home, but maybe you want to stay at under 500,000 given the other obligations you have. So, or if you have any red flags, we'll help you clear all that. So I think even though it's the boring part, it's the more important part. Once you've taken care of that and have the right real estate agent to help you along the way, I think you have, that's well begun is half done, as they say. That's a great start to
No,
the
I
process.
absolutely agree. And like you said, sure, you could qualify, but if you're so stressed once you get the property that you can't even enjoy it, then it kind of defeats the purpose.
Absolutely.
For sure.
Especially for first-time home buyers. I mean, there's a lot of emotion that's going on. The first thing after
Right.
the dopamine rush that you get into going home shouldn't be the one. The next one should not be the cortisol stress of, oh my God, what did we
Like, oh my God.
what did we sign up for? That shouldn't be the
Right.
case. Yes.
Exactly. Exactly. So now what about when okay, here's a scenario that I run across quite a bit.
Okay.
So when you're buying a home, obviously you're advised not to make major purchases. Don't use your credit because that's going to affect how you qualify for a loan.
Mm-hmm.
But at the same time, if you're not a first time home buyer, you're selling a property so that you could buy another property. Sometimes that property that you're currently living in needs some upgrades and renovations before they're going on the market. Now, how should they handle their finances in that situation where they do need to, if they don't have the cash readily available, they need to be able to get funds to fund that particular renovation project so that they can sell their property for top dollar while still making sure that they're not overdoing it and it looks negatively on their financial reports?
Yeah, really good question. So it depends on the scenario, Alice. If they are sure that they will be able to sell this home before buying new one, then it doesn't matter so much. So, for example, if they have equity in the home and they end up taking, say, a line of credit to pay for the renovation of the home, let's say that's $50,000. Because they'll be selling the home and they'll be paying off all the mortgages that's there on the property, they shouldn't be too worried about it because that's paid off. Yes, it will show as one extra credit inquiry because the lender must have done a credit inquiry on that one. But that loan is taken and that loan is paid off. That's fine. The problem happens when people are keeping that home and somehow trying to use a line of credit to use as a down payment of the new home. Because they're like, okay, we don't want to sell the home first because this is a seller's market, right? I can sell my home easily. That shouldn't be that difficult. But finding a new home might take a longer period of time, and we don't want to be homeless for that while, or we do not want to be living in a rented apartment, short-term living, etc., etc. So we don't want to do that. Then it becomes kind of a problem, is because now you're trying to get a line of credit on the current home, which means you have a new debt, new payment. And we look at something called debt to income ratio. The more debt that you take, your income stays the same. That's not changing, right? And that could mean you will qualify for a lesser home on a new property. And again, and I keep repeating that, but working with a great lender is important in this case, is because sometimes people do all of this before they go to the lender, and it's sometimes too late because they've already accrued all that debt and they don't qualify for all that. But if you involve them early in the process, they can guide you what's the best way of doing it. Like, for example, even on very high loan amounts, like even up to, say, $2 million purchase, we do a 10% down payment loan. So you may not have to pull line of credit from your current home as long as you have 10% down to buy the new home. And then you can go and sell that home and pay down your mortgage on the new home. So, or there are things called bridge loans or cross collateralization where we can lend on two properties at the same time. So there are different options. It's just that most lenders don't offer all those options, so they're limited. Or two, they may not be aware that there are other lending options out there. But yeah, I mean, if you work with the right lender, they should be able to advise you on that.
I'm interrupting my own podcast to let you know about a tool that I created to help those of you who may be feeling overwhelmed by the thought of a home renovation. When it comes to renovating your home, we know that you want to finish your project quickly and efficiently, especially when preparing a house to sell. In order to do that, you need to know what to do and in what order. The problem is there are many moving parts and it can be overwhelming. We believe renovating your home does not have to be difficult. It's all about understanding some key principles and having a plan. Over the past 2 decades, we have consulted on millions of dollars worth of real estate sales, and as a result, clients have done the happy dance all the way to the bank. Here's how you can do the same. Eliminate the guesswork and get your copy of the home selling edition of the Renovation Planner. The Renovation Planner was created to guide you through your home improvement process from start to finish. The planner will help you build your project plan so that you can renovate with confidence. This new edition will be available at therenovationplanner.com. That's therenovationplanner.com. If it's not live as of this recording, join the waitlist and you will be notified as soon as it's ready for purchase. In the meantime, you can also download our free guide to avoiding costly mistakes on your renovation projects so that you can stop spinning your wheels and start improving your home today. All the links are going to be in the show notes, or you can visit us at alicetchan.com for all the information that you need. Cheers to your soon-to-be new and improved home.
Okay. And is there an option is there a loan that's available that will loan you greater than what the asking price is, or whatever your purchase price is? Will they loan you additional funds that will help you fund those projects that you need to do once you physically own the property?
Yes and no. So
Does that make
yes
sense?
depends on the price ranges. So there are a ton of renovation loans that will fund. I wouldn't say ton, but a couple of renovation loans that will fund more than the value of the home. FHA has something called a 203K loan. That's a renovation loan. Fannie Mae had something called a renovation loan. Some of those loans are limited by the loan amount that they will offer. So, for example, if you're buying in the San Francisco Bay Area and your home costs $1.5 million already, and you want another 400,000 on top of it, that might be difficult because FHA and Fannie Mae do not lend to loan amounts of that size. But say if you're doing that in a market like, say, Dallas, Texas, or I don't know, Charlotte, North Carolina, then maybe yes, because the homes might cost you 300,000. You need another $50,000 to renovate, and that shouldn't be a problem. FHA and Fannie Mae will do that. But there are also something called construction loans. I mean, that's for the minor renovation, you may not qualify, but if you're doing something of a major renovation, then you can get a construction loan, which actually funds, in most cases, up to 80% of the future value of the property. So not at what you bought. So if you bought it $1 million, you think after the renovation, this house could be worth $2 million. I mean, you can get up to 1.6, which gives you an extra $600,000 to use towards the construction of the home that you want to get to. And then, I mean, in some cases, if you have private banking relationships with some banks, and they might be willing to lend based on the future value of it, but there are no mainstream programs if these are very expensive homes.
Okay. So basically, if you live here in the Bay Area, you're kind of screwed.
Yeah, a lot of loan programs that's the loan limit, because the government had several loan programs. It's just that they have loan limits beyond which they won't fund.
Understood. Now, what are some trends that you're kind of noticing right now in the buying market? Is there something that's happening that that people should be aware of, and this is going to affect their buying process?
Yeah, so I mean, some of the trends that you are seeing is that I mean, in terms of, you need to be looking at trends from the financing perspective, the home prices perspective itself. So you will see, I mean, we talked about the fact that the home prices are at the highest level that probably it has ever been. And that's a little bit to do with COVID, but I was saying that these trends have been there over the last 8-9 years. So these are not new trends. So even though you might see a little bit softening of the price once the market opens and production starts, and we hopefully have a little bit more lumber and construction can get in full swing. But understand that we are not building tiny little things. We are building homes, which means it could take months. I mean, some are even saying maybe years before we are able to catch up to some of the demand that we have. So it's not going to happen tomorrow that we'll start seeing major softening of prices or something. So that's one thing, is that you need to understand, because a lot of people are like, we should time the market. When the home prices go low, that's when we will buy it. I mean, you could not have timed the market in the last 80 years. Every month that you were not buying, you were probably paying more. I mean, I think I saw a joke or a meme somewhere, which was like the real estate was talking to the borrowers, to the potential buyers, and the real estate agent was saying is that if you want to look at something in a higher price range, I'll bring you to the same home tomorrow. So.
That's a good one. That is the reality, though, because I do think that everybody keeps saying, "Oh, I'll wait till the frenzy subsides," and then, but especially around here, I mean, I know around here in our area,
It never does.
It never does. Like you said, it dips a little bit just because it slows down a little bit. But then for the most part, it's just been consistently on the rise. And I don't see that changing. I mean, if a pandemic can't slow it down, what would slow it down?
And that's what I tell my clients as well, is that, look, I can get it wrong for a couple months here and there. Maybe even have a bad couple of quarters or something. But if you buy something now, I mean, you are guaranteed some of the best return on investment that you can get in 5, 7 years down the road. Add to that the fact that $500,000 is exempt from capital gains. It's probably the best investment you can make, even if you're primarily looking at real estate as an investment, which I'm not a huge fan of, because if you live in that house, there's a lot of emotional value that you get just from owning the home, and your kids having friends in the neighborhood, being able to go to schools, all of that additional factor. But if you're looking at just from investment perspective, and imagine you can put 10, 20% down, but you get to keep 100% of the upside of the equity. I mean, you don't get to do with that Apple stock. You can't go to Wall Street and say, hey, can I only put 10% down on the Apple stock? But when it goes up, can I keep the 100%
Yeah.
of it? I mean, you can't do that. Good luck with
They're
that.
like,
And
yeah,
there's
good
no
luck with that,
exemption on the
buddy.
capital gains on anything that you make there. And that's what first time homebuyers need to understand is the fact that, especially if you can get in early, if you can get in late 20s, early 30s, and get into, especially again, in a place like Silicon Valley, Bay Area kind of a place, whatever kind of home that you're able to afford, I mean, you'll be glad you made that investment 5, 7 years down the road, that you've been able to build an equity. So I think that's what they should be looking at, is a form of course, it comes with a lot of emotional benefits, and builds that sense of community. I mean, builds a sense of neighborhood, but also, I mean, probably the best investment your money can make.
Yeah. Well, I mean, how many of us have looked back at homes that we first purchased like 20, 30 years ago and said, dang, I wish I would have kept it as a rental. Like,
Exactly.
imagine all that equity that you would be able to reap from
Yeah,
now. I mean, I think
absolutely.
my very first home was $150,000. I'm sure that same property now. I haven't looked, but I'm working with a client that lives in that same area, and it was a townhome. I think they're going to be putting theirs on the market probably in the $800,000 to $900,000 range.
Mhm.
I mean, it's insane.
It is.
And I know other parts of the country don't see that level of return, even if they are in a strong market right now. But here in California, it's amazing what happens over a 1 year period,
Yeah.
let alone a 10-year period.
No, absolutely. I mean, just the dollar appreciation is just mind-boggling that you can get.
I know. So stay put. And I think somebody else just said that if you move out of California, because you get a lot of those folks
Yes.
who, oh my God, California is so crazy, I'm leaving. But as we had talked about in another interview, like if you leave, it's a one-way ticket. Don't expect to be able to come back and afford and even like fathom buying your same house back for, a 1.5% return, increase in price. It's so crazy.
It is, and you're
I don't know how
right.
people can
If you're a
do that.
California homeowner, you can technically move to any part of the country, really, because you will not get that sticker shock. But try to come back to the same place, even if you were a Californian before, you will indeed get a sticker shock. Oh my God, I just lived in the same house, same neighborhood for this price, and then now this costs that much. So, yeah, that's going to be a challenge for sure.
For sure. Now, is there anything that's happened over this past year that you just thought, I would have never guessed this if somebody like you would never imagine in a million years that this could happen beyond the actual COVID situation,
That's what
the
I was thinking.
pandemic, because nobody would have imagined that.
Don't all of us know something that happened that we imagine that will never happen in a million years? But I mean,
Oh
if
my
you think
gosh.
about it, Alice, I mean, the COVID itself was, of course, not something that anybody thought of. But and I'm talking away from probably the mortgage real estate world right now. But the fact that if New York Times came with an article very early during COVID and said, typically for a virus like this, it takes almost about 18 years to produce a vaccine. So 2038. Later, about a couple of months later, they said the best case scenario you can produce a virus for a vaccine like this will probably take 8 to 10 years. The fact that we were able to create not one, but at least 2 or 3 different vaccines within almost 8, 9 months of us being fully aware of the virus, and not just created it, commercially made it available, it started actually giving the shots in people's arms within that time period. I mean, the COVID itself was once in, I don't know, 100,000 years kind of a thing that nobody thought. But even more is what the scientists and the doctors and everybody responsible for doing this were able to make it happen. And that's a once in a million thing. Like out of all the viruses that human had seen over hundreds and thousands of years of evolution, we were not able to get a vaccine out in 9 months, even for something like a flu kind of, I mean, influenza kind of a virus, which is not even that serious. So to me, I mean, what blew my mind away is really that. I mean, if you were to ask me that this is something that anyone, and I'm not even from the scientist community, but even if you, I have a lot of friends who are doctors and scientists, and they were like, this is just unbelievable what the world was able to do, especially here in the US, of course, because now we are talking about even being able to vaccinate like 4 or 5 year olds, which is just crazy to think about the fact that within 12 to 18 months we have been able to do that. So, I mean, this is again, this is not that show, not that platform, but I mean, huge kudos
Yeah.
to
No,
everyone who made it happen, really.
no, I agree. I never really thought about it, but you're right. It did happen in a very, very short period of time, and they were able to
Yep.
roll it out very quickly. And it just goes to show that even though people think something is impossible, it's never impossible. It's like breaking world records. Like
Yeah,
my daughter's a pole vaulter now, right? So
yeah,
I look at records at what people have done, and you look at what professionals like Olympians were able to jump a certain height, but now there are high school students jumping those same heights because somebody raised the bar. And so
yeah,
everyone's trying to beat that bar,
yeah.
So, literally, but just like
In this
anything,
case,
right?
yes.
Running
Yeah,
the 5 minute mile or whatever,
yeah,
nobody thought it was possible until somebody did it. And then now everybody's beating that time over and over again. So it's one of those things that if we actually put our minds to something, anything is possible.
yeah,
And you've got the collaboration of like the brightest people in the
yeah,
world,
yep.
figuring out, okay, we need to come up with a solution because this is bad.
Yeah, and that gives hope for the future of the human population. That if we find something that nobody knew anything about, had no clue, and we can find a possible solution within a year's period, then I mean, we shouldn't, of course, be complacent in the future. But the good thing is that there are some really smart brains out there who are able to,
Hmm.
and the entire world worked together on this. That's amazing too. I mean, because there was so much at stake. So you're right, and that works for really anything. I mean, I know that that's at a very different scale, but whether you're buying a home, selling a home, or something, I mean, especially for home buyers right now, it could seem very daunting. It's something that's there, but sometimes you just need to persevere. I mean, there are some people who needs to make 12, 13 offers before they finally gets accepted. If home is that important for you, then in some cases you have to fight harder. It is what it is, but once you get in, then you can reap the reward of that equity that you build in and the emotional benefits of owning a home. So yeah, from at a different level, but I think it makes sense.
Yeah, no, I agree. I actually have a client who is expecting to pick up her keys today on her new home. So that's
Nice.
exciting. She had to try 7 times before she got the home that she's closing on today. So it is
Yeah.
challenging,
See.
but
Yeah.
and then it sucks when you don't get the house that you wanted or you thought you wanted. But I think sometimes people want a house so bad, they're just willing to put an offer on anything. And
Yeah.
ultimately, you end up with a better house because you didn't get that house. So I think that's
Yeah.
another way to look at it also that sometimes, rushing and putting an offer on just anything and everything doesn't necessarily benefit you in the long run and something better will come along. So the right house will
Yeah.
find you and you will find the right house.
Yes. That's
So,
that's
so
that's
on that front, so is Rachel available like on your website? Can you tell us a little bit more? I
yes.
was very interested in that. I thought that was so amazing when I was hearing you talk about it earlier.
She is, or it is. I'm not sure I should be calling it she. That's what I get always
Choose a
confused with.
pronoun.
Yeah.
It's a fad.
So yes. So yeah, arcuslighting.com. If you go there, then there is a link to talk to Rachel. And yeah, you should be able to try out and see how she converses. But it is very interesting, the kind of things that can be done. It's basically taking a lot of conversational artificial intelligence that's there in some of the other forms and like Google Assistant or Siri or Alexa, and just using it in a human form, which makes it more human, so to say. Rachel has a personality of its own, so hopefully people like her and find her conversing with her entertaining and most importantly informational as well, because it is at the end of the day we are trying to build human element, but we're also trying to educate people on the mortgage process.
Great. So if I was just interested in learning any information regarding, so if I'm starting out and I have no idea, I could just ask her questions and she'd be able to give me some guidance.
Ask her questions like, how do I get pre-approved? What kind of loan program should I go for? Ask her those questions.
Okay.
And we have built-in analytics where if she's not able to answer questions, then we learn from that. Like, what are the questions that's being asked to her which she's not able to answer? And then we build intelligence. The good thing about Rachel, the digital human, is that once you teach her something, 20 years down the road, she will still remember. Try to do that to your employees or kids, and they forget in like 3 seconds later, right? So it's a one-time training.
Yeah. Thoughts coming in and out of my head all the time. That's why I tell my daughter, okay, if I tell you something, you need to act on it right away because I swear I will forget. So don't make me have to try and remember, and then it'll randomly come back into my brain like 5 hours later. I'm like, dang, see? I need an AI brain. Well, thank you so much, Shashank. Where can people find you online?
So arcuslending.com, ARCUS lending.com. That's my company's website. Mortgageblog.com is where I blog. So again, it's pretty straightforward. Mortgageblog, all is spelled out, .com. There are over 500 blog posts on that website and the ability to get rate quotes, download guides. So there are several other tools, calculators, so not just blogs. Whether you're a first-time home buyer, investment buyer, repeat buyer, whatever kind of a home buyer you are, you will be able to find tons of resources on mortgageblog.com.
Okay, great. And your books that you mentioned earlier, specifically for first-time home buyers, is that available on your website or is that on Amazon? Where can we find those?
That's on Amazon. The book is called My First Home. It actually made the #1 list on Amazon bestseller when it was released. It has received some serious critical acclaims. And so, go ahead and grab a book. I think it's $10 or something. As a first-time home buyer, not bragging, but must be the best $10 you can spend.
Absolutely. I will keep all this information in the show notes. So if you didn't catch anything that he was saying, it'll be in the show notes. So if you're watching this or you're listening to this, it'll be available to you. Thank you so much, Shashank. I really appreciate you taking the time. I know you're a super busy guy. Oh, and one more thing I was going to say. You have multiple locations, right? Your actual lending office has multiple locations now. So you're not just here in the Silicon Valley?
That is correct. We have license in 25 states now, and we have physical offices in 12. So we have 12 different branch offices, really from New York to New Jersey to California. It's pretty much coast to coast. The states that we are licensed in does almost 85% of all mortgages in the U.S. So, so pretty much anywhere that you're looking at, we should probably have a license there. We are trying Hawaii, Alice. So
I'm going there in a couple of weeks. Where would you be? Would you have an office in Hawaii? Are you hiring somebody in Hawaii? Just kidding.
Don't get too excited. We'll talk about that later.
It's going to be virtual. That's the way we're heading. But at least you can go there and claim a tax expense, right? Tax write-off.
I wouldn't say that on record. I don't want IRS listening to this.
All right. Thank you so much. I appreciate your time.
Thanks, Alice.
Again.
It was a pleasure.
All right. Take care.
You just tuned in to an episode of the Behind the Renovation podcast. If you enjoyed today's episode, be sure to leave a review on iTunes and don't forget to share this episode with your friends on social media. Just make sure to tag me at Alice T. Chan on Instagram. For all the deets from today's show, visit us at alicetchan.com, click on podcast, and access all of the show notes from this episode. Imagine me raising a glass to you, a mug in this case, to your renovation journey. Cheers to your new and improved home.